Hey guys, today we are going to mount and test everything on the bike, but before that, let's do some preparations. So I designed this part to mount the headlight. There's also a embedded nut inside of this part so we can safely crank on the bolt without any hesitations. So let's do that. Okay, that's done. Now we are going to mount the turn signals. So I didn't know how to mount this, but this cap is removable, so I designed this mount and see if it will work out. So I've put a silicone all around the screen. Now it is all fixed. Now we are going to carry on with the rest of the installation. And also off camera, I cut the RGB strip into 3 pieces and made those bridges right here. Okay, now let's move on to the bike and see what we are dealing with. So this is the bike that we are going to work on today. It is eBox Dragster mini bike. with a 16S battery, and it is completely stock without any modification right now. It is also practically new. Let's go over what we're going to do on today. So the plan is to install the tail light right here, electronics under the seat. Here's the headlight, the screen, the button set, turn signals, and under the seat we're going to install the RGB LEDs right there, and the horn is gonna go on this bolt. To install the RGB lights, I'm gonna have to tip over the bike, so I want to do that first before opening the seating area to install the electronics. So let's do that first. Okay, so it looks great, but over time I don't want it to come undone, so I'm going to put a dab of hot glue on some of the critical spots, and we're gonna be finished with this one. Okay, now that the RGB LED is installed, now we can move on to the electronics. Let's start by removing the seat. Now we have 4 bolts like these under the seat. Put that aside. So let's get started by going over what to look for before actually making any connections. First and foremost, before attaching any kind of accessory, you need to determine the power source. For any electric vehicle, whether it's an electric skateboard, an e-bike, or even electric car, the essentials are very similar. So you have the battery right here, a motor controller, and the motor. These are the core components that you're going to come across on an electric vehicle. So this is our motor controller, and if the controller has some kind of accessory output, you may be able to use that, but you need to know the power limit of that port. And if we look at what we have here under the hood, you'll see that we already have some kind of 12 volt converter here, but it is only rated for 12 volts at 1 amps, which is way below what we need. And if we follow the cable, so this is the output for the 12 volts. It is going somewhere here, and where it is coming from, it should be high voltage. So it is this cable. So I am going to attach a 5 amp version of this, and since I'm not sure what kind of power this cable can handle, I decided to draw the power directly from the battery itself. But of course, this is where it gets critical. If you're dealing directly with the battery, you must include some kind of a fuse on board. Otherwise, you'll be risking safety. And in my case, the anti-spark switch that is going to be directly connected to the battery has onboard fuse right here. So let me go over the connections to clarify everything. So this is going to go to the light module. This is our 12 volt output. And the original wiring has the 12 volt output going right here. And I made this parallel connection. So when we unplug this, we're going to plug that to retain the original connection. And the input side of the original connection here, we are going to use that connector as our ignition, because when I turn the key right here, let me move off the camera, this connector starts to supply the battery voltage, but I turn it off, it cuts power on this connector. So it is really good option for our ignition switch. So we are going to use our enable pin right here, and we are going to install it to here. And our anti-spark switch, the input side, is going to go directly to the battery. Let me show it up close. So this is the main battery connector. I made this parallel connection. So we're going to draw power directly from here and control the output with this cable. So let me do that connection. Let's start by disconnecting the original converter. So this is very simple. We're going to unclip that. We're going to unclip that. So this is the original one. This is our replacement. This is our battery sense cable, and it is very important to not make any mistake here. So this is the inside, so the in power goes in from here. This side needs to connect to the battery directly. Make sure again. Okay, so if we don't get any sparks, that means that we are making something right. No sparks, which is good. Now we are going to connect the output, which was the original wiring right here. This was the 12-volt output. So we're going to connect it. Make sure the polarity is red to red. Okay. But of course, this whole thing wouldn't work if we don't include the enable pin. So this is our enable pin. Goes to this connector. What's left is to connect the output of the 12 volts to our light module. Okay, so when I turn the ignition on, this LED should come on as well. All right, so it's working. Let's turn the ignition off. Yep, it's all automatically coming on and off, which indicates that our anti-spark switch is correctly working. Okay, so let's install our tail light. It's very easy to install. You just need to push the cable from this side, and then there is only one way it goes, at an angle and then up. And then we close the clamps. Easy and secure. Now we are going to install the turn signals. Okay, the next is the headlights. Open it. Good, that is done as well. It's gonna be like this. So with the horn, I didn't know where to put it actually, because I didn't want to stick out like this. So I found this bolt right behind this front cover. I'm just going to attach it and then put this 3D printed nuts on it. Okay, that's pretty secure right now. This is our handlebar button set. Let's install that. So it is a two-piece design. That's why it is very easy to install. This is how it looks from the front. The bottom one is a bit hard to reach, but it's fine. Now we are going to install the screen. So I'm going to start upside down for an easier access. Oof, I forgot to put the hatch, but yeah, I'll do it later. Okay, now we can flip it, tighten the bolts. Okay, good to go. Okay guys, let me explain how I did the battery sensing on this bike, because as I mentioned in my first video, I never knew about anything about how brake sensing works on e-bikes. So I just follow the cable. Let me get all the wiring that's right here. So this is my wiring that I made. I'm just going to explain it now. There's a bunch of connectors right under here. Okay, so it looks like a lot, but it is actually not. So I gently yanked on these two cables and they're coming from the brake levers. Black and reds, black and reds. And if you see where they're going, they're both going to blue and orange cables. So in essence, those two black cables are one. It's because this blue cable is parallel connected and it's going somewhere inside. And for the orange one, it's the same thing. It is connecting the red one, and the orange one. So the orange one and the red one is the same. The black one, two blacks, and the blue is the same. So why is it connected in the first place? So the controller wants to know when you pull on the brake lever so you can cut the power on the motor. And I've seen some people disconnect this connector entirely because they don't want that feature. In that case, you can still connect the light module, but in that case, you're going to run two cables directly from the light controller into these connectors. So I measured these two cables against ground. Blue one is actually 0 volt, but it's not ground. The orange one is actually a battery connector. And so what happens is when you pull on the brake lever, so the brake lever bridges the connection between the red and black. So this blue cable in essence becomes the orange cable. And in that case, you want to connect our battery sensing cable to the black one. And since those two black cables are essentially the same because of this blue cable, once you tap into one of the black cables, you can sense braking on the both levers. Okay, so the next step is to route the cables nicely and neatly, but before that I'm going to attach everything to the light board to see if everything is working nicely, and then I'm gonna go with the routing the cables. Battery. Okay, so let's try it out. Okay guys, I just made a stupid mistake. I just turned on the ignition and the system didn't came on. After a bit of its inspection, I saw that there is no power coming into the 12 volt rail, and then a further inspection, I just realized that my battery sense cable was in reverse polarity. So basically I connected the red to black, black to red, which is a fatal mistake. But thankfully my anti-spark switch has a fuse on it, and I just cut it open to the heat shrink. I checked the fuse and it was blown. I just replaced it with a new one. Everything is working now, and this is again shows how important it is to have a fuse here. It protected everything, the light module, the DC converter, everything is fine. Let's turn it on. We can see that the light started to shine. Let me get the camera here. As you can see, let's turn on the DRLs. They came on. I need to fix the headlight. Need to tighten the bolt. It's gonna be like this. Left one, okay. Right one, good. Let's turn on the horn. Okay. Headlights. High beam. Okay. High beam effect. Let's move back to the tail light. Right blinker. And then left blinker. Let's turn off the DRL. Okay, turn on the DRL. Okay. The brakes are important. Let's see the brakes. Good. Holding. Releasing, holding, releasing. Okay, that's good. Let's turn off the DRL and try it again. Perfect. It is showing the correct voltages. That is good. Let's see the RLs. Okay, turn it on. Low beam, high beam. All right. Okay. You can turn on the high beam, low beam, and turn on the RGB maybe. Let me pull back the camera. Okay. The next one. Okay, everything seems to be working good. So what I'm gonna do next is some cable management. I'm gonna hide everything, especially this light board. I'm thinking to tuck it right here behind the motor controller, and this one gonna be under those cables where it was the original one. And then I'm gonna show you the result, but I think I'm gonna do it tomorrow because it's getting late tonight. I just moved over this motor controller to the front and snuck the space at the back of it, which is a light controller. The cables are going around here and everything is nice and flush, so I'm just going to close it down now. But before that, let's start the bike, see if everything works. Everything is nice and secure. Okay, so this is the final look.